Hi, today for math, we are going to be using benchmarks to understand relative size of measurements. Some important words that we need to know are benchmarks and measurement. When we are measuring something, whether it is with length, volume, or weight, there are two types. There is the customary measurement, which is what is mainly used in the United States. Then there is the metric system, which is also something we need to know because other places do use it. So, to try and help you understand what they are, today is going to be about everyday objects that are that length, size, and weight. So, for customary units of length, there are four things: there's inch, foot, yard, and mile. Now, an inch is about as long as your very first knuckle on your index finger. A foot is about as long as your license plate. A yard is about as long as a baseball bat. And a mile is about 20 minutes walking. So to try and think about those everyday objects as how long they are. So here's a question for you. Jake says the length of his bike is about 4 yards. Use the benchmark units to determine if Jake's statement is reasonable. Well, first thing we need to do is we need to look at just the yards. If a yard is about the size of a baseball bat, then we're saying that Jake's bike is 4 of those. Does that really make sense? 4 baseball bats for one bike? No, that does not make sense. So if we want to make it correct, we need to think about those baseball bats. And I would say 1.5, maybe 2 baseball bats is the length of Jake's bike. So I would say Jake's bike is about 1 or 2 yards. Here's another one. This one is liquid volume. So for liquid volume, we have some everyday objects. We have a cup, which is just a measuring cup. We have a pint. A pint is the same size as the milk containers you get for lunch. Then we have a quart. That's about the size of a juice bottle. Then we have half a gallon and a gallon. Half a gallon is half the size of a milk container, and a gallon is the full size of a milk container. So, thinking of these benchmarks, about how much liquid is in a mug of hot chocolate? Well, in a mug of hot chocolate, that's only about a cup, so I'm going to say it's a cup. Now, maybe you really, really like hot chocolate and it would be a pint, but in an everyday mug, a mug's only about a cup. Here's the next type of benchmark. This one is for weight. 1 ounce, that's about 5 pencils. A pound, that's about a loaf of bread. And a ton, that's about the size of a minivan or a large car. So thinking of those benchmarks about how much does an apple weigh? Well, an apple is not going to weigh a ton, and that is way too big. An apple, if you compare a loaf of bread and an apple, well, the loaf of bread is still too heavy. And so what we're going to do is we're going to compare it to an ounce, and we're going to say an apple weighs a couple ounces. So let's say 2 ounces. That's how you compare benchmarks to help you figure out length, volume, and weight. The next couple we're going to take a look at are those metric systems. Now, for metric units of length, there is 5. There's a millimeter. That is basically if you hold up your fingers and you pinch them together, that's about how long a millimeter is. Then a centimeter, instead of going lengthwise like this for your knuckle, it's just across. So even smaller than an inch. A decimeter, that's how far from your pinky to your thumb spread out. And then a meter is about as long as your front room door. A kilometer, that is a 10 minutes walking. So here's my question. Is the length of the classroom greater or less than 1 kilometer? Does it take you 10 minutes to walk across the classroom? If yes, then yeah. If it does not take you 10 minutes, then it would be no. Instead of using that larger unit, we would use meters. So here are some more units of measurements in metric system. This one is for volume. A milliliter is a drop, those droplets of water that you sometimes see for science, where you suck up the water and then you splurt it out. That's one way to measure it. And then a liter would be a full container of water. So what would we use to measure water in the fish tank? Would we use a milliliter or a liter? I hope you said liter, because if we used a milliliter, that would be way too small. And here is our last metric unit. It is mass, or how much things weigh. Oops, there we go. For metric units of mass, a dollar weighs about a gram, and a baseball bat weighs about a kilogram. So when we think about this, we're thinking about that gram is lighter or less weight than a kilogram. So how much is the mass of a paperclip? Would we use gram or kilogram? I hope you said gram, because this is the smaller unit of measure. I hope this helped you think of the different weights, volume, and length that you can see throughout your everyday life. I now want you to go find some of these things in your house and just hold them or measure them or see how long they are. That way you kind of get a feel for what they are in everyday life. Thank you.